My guest today is musician and producer Dave Kerzner, who we've had on the show before when he was with the band Sound of Contact. He's back to talk with us about his new solo album, a prog epic masterpiece called New World, and we're happy to have him back. Hey man, how's it going?
Good, how you doing?
Good. So man, you've been busy. I can't imagine all the stuff you're dealing with right now.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Right?
Still wrapping up the deluxe edition, So
last time we spoke, I think you had just finished a early mix of Stranded, and I'm not sure how much of the album you even had other than that at that point.
Yeah, at that time I had most of the tracks for the standard edition, the main version of the album, written already and recorded in some form, but not completed with all the tracking. I probably had most of the drums recorded by then, and a lot of the guitars and keyboards. Maybe not all the vocals. That was one of the last things to add, the final vocals. I had demo guide vocals, but just to kind of have a sense of the song. But I kept revising the lyrics because I take them very seriously and wanted everything just right. So it's taken me almost a year
right
to do, really.
Well, let me backtrack just a little bit and get sort of set up the lay of the land here with everything. For anyone who doesn't know, the album is now out, right? Officially sort of December 9th, I think was the date. And so it was a Kickstarter campaign that now you had the digital out. Where are you in terms of digital versus the physical? And there's a deluxe release coming. So how is that all right now?
Okay, here's the overview of the whole craziness.
Right.
Yes, I used Kickstarter to fund the making of my album because I did it independently without a record label. I used my own label called Rec Play.
Right.
And so we were very successful with the campaign. It brought in nearly 200% of its intended goal, and which was a good thing because I even went over that since I'm a very extravagant producer and just went all out on this thing. The CD is out, by the way. It's just out today, in fact, so it ships tomorrow, the main CD. Right. The deluxe edition is this expanded version I was talking about. That's what I'm immersed in now. But because of the Kickstarter campaign, there had to be, the way it works for anyone who's not familiar is it's called crowdfunding. Basically, people, anybody, listeners, fans, friends, family, who want to support a project such as a music project like an album or anything else. There's all sorts of things on there. And you don't really donate exactly. You buy something, and there's these items on a list to buy at various prices to, justify the expense, because it's nothing you get back in return. You just get a product back, essentially. So right. I put together all these fancy deluxe packages with different things to give different price points so that people could contribute more significantly and get something significant back, as opposed to just the album, which normally sells for, let's say, $10 on iTunes as a download, right, or a little over twice that as a CD shipped to you. But this was like, well, okay, let's do a double CD. And instead of doing just a double CD with the main one and a bunch of extras, I kind of asked. I was very interactive. I'm a interactive musician artist, anyway. I'm on social media, and especially Facebook.
Yeah, absolutely.
Talking to people, and I just asked. I said, well, what would you prefer? I said, because I'm into both ideas of just having an extra CD with all the outtakes, but it just so happens that the outtakes were part of this story because it was a concept album. The other option was to make an extended version of the album, and it was an interesting thing because where literally it was like the album with extended songs and additional songs all in the order of a concept album, like an alternate reality, kind of like in a movie where you have, let's say, a movie like Lord of the Rings, and then you get the DVD with the extended version with extra footage, but it's put into place of the movie as opposed to deleted scenes at the end or something. It's those two approaches, but right, in an album. And everyone was like way into the deluxe version, which with it done where it's extended. And so that was an interesting sort of, I guess, marketing test in a sense, because and maybe from the background of having done Dimensionaut, and it being such a favorite amongst certain progressive rock fans, and them knowing how much I was involved in that, I think there was just a built-in confidence that it was like, yeah, man, do the deluxe. And everyone, most people, actually, that was the most popular item more than the regular album.
Well, you know what? Being a sort of a deluxe edition junkie myself, right, with all of this, so all these bands that put out stuff, the Transatlantics and Neil Morris and Steve Wilson and whoever, I think that sort of helped fund the genre in a sense. From my perspective, I think that this is a captive audience that knows, hey, we're not going to get this stuff anywhere else. We're not going to get this on the radio. It isn't that kind of thing. We want the more you can give us, the better. We're ready to pay. We're ready to own it. You know what I mean? And I think that's been one of the really cool things that has come out over the last few years, at least from what I've seen.
That is one of the things that I love about the prog genre, the progressive rock genre, is that songs are expected to be longer, more embellished productions, grandiose, pretentious,
right?
Alternate versions, very collectors, music aficionado oriented, and so that's great, because for me, I'm into that as well as a listener. I like alternate versions, and I even like demos and all those things. But I especially love the idea of, let's say, the premise of there being an album that I like, and then some vision for an expanded version. I think what happens most of the time, and has happened in the past anyway, is a band puts out an album, like let's say Dark Side of the Moon or whatever it is, and they're just putting out their latest album. They have no idea how it's going to be received yet. They're just putting it out, and then years later, I mean, not every band puts out an album like that, but years later, maybe like let's say OK Computer from Radiohead, they put out a deluxe version later because it's such a favorite, and the deluxe version has the outtakes. It has the whole sort of deleted scene second disc thing, and it's really cool. I love it. But maybe at the beginning when they made that record, it would to me it would have even been cooler if the whole record was like extended the way that I approached New World, and you just had like longer pieces of the songs that you liked, and additional songs in between, and segues and all that. It was like the big OK Computer, as opposed.
That's sort of that fine line, right? That bands walk with the record label, especially when you're maybe a Radiohead. It's a little different, but most bands, if left to their own devices, would put everything on every album with the longest version of everything they could, right? So you have to sort of watch yourself at times. But like you said, in this genre, that's almost thrown out the window. You can just go for it all. It's easier.
It's funny you mention record labels, because you're right. I've even seen cases where the record label in this genre wanted to cut things down or take tracks out of albums and stuff like that. So it's like, yeah, I think when you're talking about, let's say, people on the business side, to a certain extent, I mean, there's obviously a business angle that, like you said, Steven Wilson, for instance, I know he's told me personally that those deluxe editions help fund his touring. And that makes a whole lot of sense. Yeah. So, from a business standpoint, there is an angle to this more concept, but I think typically, you'll get some opposition. Like, okay, we need to cut this down and make it more, radio friendly or concise or whatever the angle is. But yeah, when you're independent that much more, you could just, that's one of the beautiful things about being independent, is you do what you want. And this is what I wanted to do. I mean, I was okay with either, but I really was leaning toward that. And my justification was everyone saying that that's what they wanted. And so that's what it is. Getting back to your original question, there's the standard edition, which is a single CD. That's the main version of the album. It's a full jam-packed CD of 78 minutes. The download version of that is available now. It's been available since December 9th on iTunes. and it's actually not up on Amazon yet because Amazon had a little bit of a problem getting digital releases going during the holiday season, which is amazing to me. But I've been told it's going to be up any day now, so we'll see. But they're not getting that together yet, so we'll see. But it's been available from my website, davekerzner.com. My Bandcamp page, which is actually under the banner of Sonic Elements, which is my Sonic Reality production outfit, where I do tribute albums and other things. So I put everything under Sonic Elements on Bandcamp, so there's one sort of store to get all my digital releases that I'm putting out in this year and next year. And then digitally, you get a higher quality version there. You get the PDF liner notes with the lyrics and everything. So it's a nice option. Some people just want the convenience of buying from iTunes. Some people want a higher quality version, and you can get it from Bandcamp. I think it's a great site for that.
Yeah, I want to jump into musically a little bit because we could talk forever on all this stuff for sure. Musically, you cover so much territory. There's a lot of influences that you kind of pick out at certain points, and definitely the Sound of Contact vibe, from your work there, you can hear that as well. Did you know though that you sound at times a lot like David Gilmour singing? I mean, it's really like amazing at certain points.
Well, I started to realize, and people were telling me that. In fact, when we were working on Dimension, there's some songs I demoed up with me singing, and then sometimes it was like, let's say a song I wrote and I was presenting it to Simon and Matt or Kelly, and it was like, well, here's the song, and then I would just sing it. And Closer to You was one of them, and I sang it, and Matt said to me, he's like, you sound a lot like Dave Gilmour, man. I'm like, I do? Like, it hadn't even really actually occurred to me. And so, I love Pink Floyd, and I love the lyrics of Roger Waters from the 70s Pink Floyd albums like Wish You Were Here and Dark Side and The Wall, and I like in general I like a lot of British rock too. I love John Lennon and Paul McCartney, the Beatles, and all sorts of stuff. Yes, Genesis, Peter Gabriel. So that's kind of I gravitate toward that style of lyric writing and melody writing and phrasing. So it just comes out that way, and it just so happens that my voice is that sort of kind of husky mid range sound. So and then obviously in certain cases I'll go a little more toward that, like in Stranded, for instance. I had Durga McBroom from Pink Floyd, and we got a little Floydy with it in certain spots, not the whole thing, but as a tip of the hat homage a little bit to some of my heroes, but I do it in a way that comes naturally to me. So it's almost like it's not very intentional. It's just sort of after the fact, like a production decision, like, oh, actually, let's maybe go a little more Gilmour-esque on this. And it's no different actually than I would say to a drummer, you know what, play that fill like a Ringo or a Bonham kind of groove or a fill.
Right.
Or the guitar player, do something bluesy like Clapton or Gilmour. I mean, we use these styles as references and then ideally make them our own. And that's kind of how I really kind of meld some stylistic influences from both Gilmour and actually Roger Waters as well, and others like Peter Gabriel and some of my other favorite singers. And only to the extent that it suits my voice, really.
Right. No, it all works really well. I know that you are a big collector of keyboards. I've seen the collection. You have a ton of vintage Genesis keyboards and things that were used on super famous albums and all that. How much of that stuff was used throughout the recording, and did you let yourself kind of play with those toys you have there on certain parts of the album?
I did. I love vintage keyboards, and but the song is the most important thing. I love to play with toys, and part of me wants to just sit down with Fernando and some other musicians and actually start songs just playing with toys, because happy accidents happen, and
sure,
you can really. But I didn't approach the album like that. This album, This album was done mostly written from the piano or the guitar at first, and it worked as a melodic piece of music, and then it was about production and adding the flavors that I wanted, whether it was from other musicians playing or me turning on a Prophet 5, an analog synthesizer that Tony Banks and Peter Gabriel used, or a Mini Moog, which Rick Wakeman and Richard Wright used, or an EMS Synthy, which Pink Floyd used. You know, I would pull out, and CP70s, certain, and Wurlitzers. These are instruments that I have around me that I love to just look at and play, and it's art to me. It's history. But, you know, when it's appropriate, I'll fire it up and record it. But it wasn't like, how can I make an album so I can play with my toys kind of a
No,
thing.
yeah, definitely. No, the songs
Like,
themselves are great. It's there's certain elements though that you kind of hear these cool instruments come out and you go, oh, that's a nice little touch, you know, in terms of production that I noticed. But one of the things that is really great with the album, again, outside of the songs, is the production is just stellar. I mean, it's amazing. And I guess you did most of that yourself, right? How much of your expertise with your Sonic Reality company and all of that kind of played into the amazing sort of sound on the record?
Well, apart from Stranded, I mixed the album as well with the assistance of Chris Holmes, who worked with us on Dimensionaut and recorded Dimensionaut, and he helped me get some of the mix editing together. And then I did all the production. Tom Lord Alge mixed Stranded. He's a world-renowned mix engineer. Mixes Coldplay and Dave Matthews Band and huge bands. And he's a friend of mine. He lives in Miami, and fortunately, you know, we got a little bit of his time and expertise, and that was fantastic.
Yeah.
But Sonic Reality, the interesting thing, I have a sound company called Sonic Reality. We sample instruments for software companies like IK Multimedia and Yamaha and Roland. We've done it for years. A lot of keyboards have our sounds in them, and we've recorded every type of instrument, including a lot of famous musicians and their instruments, like Nick Mason from Pink Floyd, Neil Peart from Rush, Terry Bozzio, Billy Cobham, along with the original engineers, like, let's say, Hugh Padgham, who recorded Genesis and The Police, Alan Parsons, who recorded Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon and Alan Parsons Project.
Right.
So we collaborate in Sonic Reality with all these greats, you know, the legends of recording and music in that genre for classic rock. And so I've obviously, they're like my mentors and friends. So I can ask Alan a question. I can be like, what did you use? What microphone did you use for money? You know, whatever it is. And it's great. Or Ken Scott, who recorded the Beatles and everything. So they're like mentors to me, which is luxurious, but they also write books, and there's DVDs you can get with them, and other people can learn from them too. And of course, other musicians can buy these products as well to have Nick Mason's drum sound in their music. So when I made this record, of course, I'm going to use these products because I know them better than anyone. So if I need a sitar, I know I can grab Sonic Synth and boom, I've got a sitar. I could pull up Sample Tank and I've got Miroslav string sections and all that stuff. So of course I utilize that in a very efficient way as a producer from years of studying individual instruments and sample libraries, so I can actually kind of make a scalable budget record,
Right.
Sounding like I had a full orchestra when I would never have enough money to do that. So I did that, and then there's a song called Solitude, which features the backing vocalist from the Australian Pink Floyd, which is a very popular Pink Floyd tribute band. But the rhythm section, or at least the drums, are technically Nick Mason from Pink Floyd, recorded by Alan Parsons, because I used Nick Mason drums by Sonic Reality, the product that features him actually playing and Alan Parsons recreating the sound using all the same equipment they did back in the 70s at Abbey Road, to get that sound extracted out of the album and usable in any style of music, but definitely something suitable for again, another sort of tribute to Pink Floyd, that song, and especially Richard Wright, because it's kind of a Great Gig in the Sky nod, if you will, because
Right.
it's female vocals. So yeah, so that's technically Nick Mason on drums. You can't really credit it that way. I can't, and the customers can't. You have to sort of say it like this is Nick Mason drums by Sonic Reality. But it is like a virtual session with Nick Mason, which is amazing.
Yeah, that's really cool stuff to know going into how the making of this album came together, because it really is a lot more than just you with two guys putting out a record. There are a lot of special guests on top of that went into this, and I mean the list is like a Prog who's who of legends almost. First of all, talk about some of the people that are on the record, and did you imagine when you started it that it would just keep expanding into this amazing list of people that offered to contribute?
It's funny. With my other project, Sonic Elements, which is more of a fantasy band by nature and a tribute, we do covers. And again, those are specifically based around, let's say, the famous drummers that we record. So I'm doing a Rush tribute based around the album, based around the drums of Neil Peart, performed by Neil and recorded by Nick Raskulinecz, who's Rush's producer. And so that's what that is. And I thought for my solo record, I'm not going to go all out with the Rolodex and start bringing in names, because I don't want to also look like it's just about that and not about me or the song, me as a solo artist in the songs. I didn't want it to overshadow it. So I was careful with it. But I normally am anyway. I'm more of like a director casting roles. Like, who would be perfect for this? Not just who can we get to make this look amazing with a list of names.
Right.
I never think that way, because it's so, I'm kind of burnt on albums that I've seen like that. Like, I don't even believe it. I think a lot of people are kind of jaded. It's like you see a whole list of names, and you're like, yeah, well, it's not like I'm going to listen to that and it's going to be as good as Brain Salad Surgery or Close to the Edge. It's probably just, cool, neat novelty that they're all on there, but not necessarily cast like, oh my God, that's the perfect guy to sing that one. So that's how I think. I think this part would be great to have Francis Dunnery shredding on the electric guitar, if he would. Unfortunately, he's a good friend of mine, and even though he's more acoustic these days, I kind of coaxed him into getting back to his roots from It Bites and electric guitar, Alan Holdsworth influenced shredding and whatnot. So that's a taste of that. I'm friends with Steve Hackett, and through working with him on his Genesis Revisited 2 album, he basically was kind enough to return the favor, and so to speak, in his terms, because it was obviously a privilege to do that in the first place. There was no favor needing to be returned. But he offered to play on the record, and I had parts because I'm very much into him and Genesis. I've been very influenced by both. So there was several parts that were perfect for him, and he fit, like a glove.
His parts are amazing. They stand out so well, and right away it's him playing, which is I always love that about guitarists that sort of have their own unique sound, but right away when it's him on the album.
Yeah, I agree, and actually I would say that about most of the musicians. If you know their sound, and if you don't, you at least know somebody is present with character, and it shines through. And I'm really proud of that, because just because it has my name on it doesn't mean this is a Dave Kerzner ego fest where it's like, now I'm going to do a solo that's going to blow your mind.
Right.
It's me doing this and me doing that. It's like, no. I'm the songwriter. I'm the artist now. I'm the lead singer. I'm the front man. And the producer. But joining me is a colorful cast of people from all over the world that are really good at their particular instrument, a particular style, and it fits with mine in this song or that song. Like, for instance, the title track, New World, I sing with David Longdon from Big Big Train. And I love his voice, and he's a really cool person, really nice, very talented, and was so easy to work with and great. And it blends beautifully and has kind of like an ELO-ish type of sound, and we're both really into it. So like that fit. And then, as I mentioned, Solitude with those backing singers, Durga McBroom from Pink Floyd, fit on several songs perfectly. Fernando Perdomo is the guitar player / bass player who's on most of the record, and that gives it a consistency at the core, because we speak the same language as far as, we're both into the history of classic rock and prog, and he's even more of like a walking musical encyclopedia of, like, if you want to know like some obscure record, and who was on it and all those details, he's that guy. Kind of like Randy McStein. I love guys like that. Actually, they're really, great utility musicians. They play everything, and they also know everything. You're like, oh yeah, the third Frank Zappa album, and oh, okay, cool. I know what I know, but they know everything.
Right.
So he was great to have as an anchor. And then Nick DiVirgilio on drums, who I used to play with in Kevin Gilbert's bands, Thud and Giraffe, was just great to work with him. I love his drumming. His style is just amazing. To me, it's very Phil Collins influenced, but so I like that. He really gets it though. He has the feel, and he's tasty, and he's played with Tears for Fears and all sorts, and Kevin and Spock's Beard and all sorts of great bands over the years. And he's just a seasoned player who just naturally fits with my music.
Yeah, he's an amazing musician all around. He shreds on guitar and everything. Yeah, I mean, he's unbelievable.
So I surround myself with great players, who can execute things, especially remotely, because most of it was recorded in different places, like their own studio or wherever they were. And I needed to know, like, have an idea, because if you book a studio in Vancouver or Oregon, we booked a studio in both those places for Nick, but I knew what to expect from him, whereas if I booked a studio somewhere and it was someone new and I wasn't there, that's really risky. You don't have unlimited budget to just book studios to take a chance. And generally speaking, I learned from Steven Wilson this, because when I worked with him on Graves for Drowning, he said to me, I said, do you want me to play on this? He kept sending me tracks and stuff while we were making Dimension Out. We were kind of trading back and forth, saying, this is what I'm working on, this is what I'm working on. And I said to him, do you want me to play on any of this? He hadn't actually said, like, I want you to play on this. He said, yeah, you could play on it. He said, sure, yeah, try some stuff. He said, as long as you don't mind if I don't use it. And I thought, fair enough. I'll take a crack at it. And I actually wish in retrospect that I tried more. I just didn't have that much time. I was juggling things. But, I played on Raider 2, and he didn't use all of it. But he used some of it, and then some of it I still, the extras I used on Dimension, actually, some of the sound effects I did. But yeah, so that's the philosophy I have, is kind of like, well, do your part, and if you're cool with taking some direction from me, great. And if you just want to do it and let me decide if I'm going to use it or what I'm going to use of it or not, then it's my album, and if it was your album, it could be the other way around. I'll play and you can use it or not. And I think that's a great way to work with people. And I was very, very fortunate that everyone's contributions literally was stellar, was just the best of themselves for the song, and very passionate and very well played and tasteful.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's great stuff. It's a lot of fun to listen to. I have a few favorite parts already that I sort of picked out that it really stand out for me. The middle of The Lie, that sort of melodic breakdown after the second chorus is just so cool. And really pretty. The middle kind of whoa part in Redemption, so it kind of that part is just awesome. I was wondering, now that you're now out there, you're putting your face on this, and you're front man, and it's all about sort of your vision, and you could, now you take the criticisms or the praise or whatever it is. How do you feel about that now? Now it's about your vision, your project, and you have to sort of deal with that aspect of it.
Well, knock on wood, fortunately, I've seen nothing but 5-star reviews and praise so far. But of course, there's always, I don't think there's any artist who doesn't have both, the critics and the praise. And I know, there's certain things, like, for instance, how close I am to my influences, that, are asking to be criticized by those who aren't open-minded about that. I think there's more people that love something that's familiar to them or nostalgic, and yet also at least does offer something new and progresses. I'm confident that I've achieved that, at least to my own standard, and I have a high standard. I'm my biggest critic. So, and ultimately, I think as an artist, you have to even though this is new for me being a solo artist, I've been in the music industry for a long time, working with all sorts of, from independent artists to some of the biggest artists in the world. And, you have to be tough, and you have to also just kind of maybe not exactly believe either the praise or the criticism. You need to just kind of take it with a grain of salt and go, well, this is fantastic. It's what's more important, I think, is that you're reaching people, that you're moving them. That to me is a success. So I already feel like it's a success because I've heard people say that it helped them drive a long commute and it just made like the traffic disappear, or that someone was saying that their mother had died and that it lifted their spirits. It's things like that matter.
Right.
And so I've achieved that so far. And even if that's all it did was the people I've heard from today, and of course an album lives on to reach more people, hopefully. But even so far, I feel like it's a mission accomplished from that standpoint. And that's on the external thing. And I would say, in a lot of artists that I know, like Francis Dunnery agrees with me, we talked about this, it starts with pleasing yourself as an artist, like achieving your vision. Whatever it is, maybe no one is going to like it, but if this is your vision and you feel like you've reached, the point of like, that's what I wanted to create, then that's the most important thing. I think by nature, if you line up with it, then people will. That's how it works.
Yeah.
Your love for it translates to others loving it. How many? Who knows? It depends on the connection, and you never know. I had actually no idea how this would be received. I had a little bit of a confidence boost, I guess, from Dimension, just seeing how many people just love that album and what they say about it, and knowing inside, whether they exactly realize who did what on it, but knowing how much I wrote on the record and how involved in the production I was, I thought, well, that's kind of like my test. I think they like a lot of my style that was in that, and that carries over with my other work, plus all this other styles that I wouldn't have done with Sound of Contact. And losing things that I can't do, like I don't sound anything like Phil Collins, for example. Right. And certain stuff things like that. But just carrying really my sound and expanding and pushing the envelope for my sound. It was half like a little bit of confidence, but not overconfidence, because let's face it. I mean, I've never sung lead on a track released to the public before. I mean, I've done it for years in my my demos and my songwriting and everything, but I've never actually put it out there. So I had no idea how people were really going to take it, apart from putting up clips in the Kickstarter campaign. That was actually my test. No one said anything. Everyone was like, sounds good, Dave, thumbs up. And then finally it was like, okay, world, here it is. It took me decades, but I finally am presenting myself as the artist as opposed to being behind the scenes. Where I've obviously been more comfortable, but I'm totally fine being the front man, and I actually enjoy the self-sufficient aspect of being a solo artist.
So now that you've done that and this album is out, and there's still a long process, I'm sure, of maybe putting together some videos and other stuff that I know you've mentioned, what's sort of the next plans as far as shows, or are you already sort of thinking about another album at some point, and what's the future?
I have another band called Mantra Vega.
That's right, absolutely.
And this is a whole other angle, because I have Heather Finley as a co-writer and the main singer, and I'm the secondary singer in that band, sort of like a Fleetwood Mac kind of situation, but more progressive rock. And they're based in the UK with Dave Kilminster, plays with Roger Waters on guitar, and some of the guys from Mostly Autumn. And we're going to be touring for sure next year over in Europe. So, and we also said that we would be playing my solo stuff, Heather's solo stuff, some songs we wrote from our previous bands, Mostly Autumn and Sound of Contact, and of course the new Mantra Vega record, which is coming out next year. Awesome. That we're planning around spring to release the debut Mantra Vega record, which I've also been working on. So, like when you say, "Are you thinking of the next record?" That's the next record of original music and then beyond that, yeah, I'd actually like to do a solo album, one a year, but we'll see.
I don't know. The way you take these on, that might be asking a bit much, but
I have a full album written actually already, but I don't know when I'm going to release it. I've actually been working on it for about 20 years since I used to play with Kevin. So that'll maybe be my third release. Right. Well, I'm always thinking about another album, but I need to reel that in a little.
Yeah. I want to, again, just congratulate you on the record. I feel sort of fortunate to have been there a little bit in the beginning when you were starting the process and spoke to you then. And actually, you were, I think, my second interview ever on the Prog Report, which is going back a ways. So, yeah, listen, I'm a big fan and was a big fan of Sound of Contact and a big fan of the solo record. And good luck. I wish you the best with it. And hopefully, we'll speak again soon. I'll see you around.
All right. Take care,
I'll be in touch. Bye. Thanks again to Dave for the interview. For more information and upcoming interviews, please check theprogreport.com and don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter and subscribe to our podcast on iTunes. Thanks.